Hi, I'm John Dougal, and this is Not for Pie Eaters. Today we'll continue in the wisdom category with the second half of the two-part series, Money or Time. In the first video, I covered a high-level plan that allocates money to live now and also provides the resources that you'll need for what you'd like to see happen in the future. There'll be a link to that first video at the end of this presentation. Today we're going to raise awareness of some common risks to your long-term plans. Before we get into it, I'm just going to repeat, where did this Not for Pie Eaters title come from for the channel? And the slur Pie Eaters came from an English sports program I saw about 10 years back, where there was a fan angry with a player on his team, and he referred to this guy as a pie-eating waste of space. Well, that slur identifies the types of who will not benefit from this channel. Hence, it's not for pie eaters, because a pie eater is undisciplined. A pie eater scoffs at what they don't already know. If they listen to the program, they're not going to create any plans to improve their life. And even if they did, they wouldn't bother to do any of the work to get started. So this channel is not for pie eaters. For our wisdom quotes, both pertain to the fact that a bad relationship will ruin your life more often than anything else. And the first one's from Mark Twain. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And I can't think of anything that fits this saying better than a person who gets into a relationship that's bad, because they think they see the person that's sitting across from them, and that person draws them in. They get into a relationship too quickly, and then they find out too late that they're not the person that they thought they were. And the worst case scenario is, hey, you got some kids with this gal. People get into these relationships by idealizing someone, and the person in front of you is replaced with a phony, better version that only exists in your mind, and you don't see the real her. Half of marriages end in divorce, and the odds are far worse on second and third marriages. And so you got to ask yourself, well, what's going on here? Well, it turns out that men, for some reason, can still pair bond after a number of sexual relationships, but that isn't that way with women, and that her ability to pair bond gets worse and worse the more sexual partners that she's had, and there's lots of data out there that show this. And so then you say, well, what is it with women? Because women, when they date, they always want to date a guy that was better than the last. And if a woman happens to have relationship and a bit of sex with a top quality guy, then that's her new benchmark, and it's what she expects. And nothing less will do for a while, and men, for the most part, we can procreate, into our 70s and maybe even beyond. That's not that way with women, and there comes a time where a woman's body tells her, hey, it's now or never. And that's what drives a woman to settle for second best or third best or fourth best, with a guy that she won't really bond with. I first encountered that in the family that I grew up in, and I don't mean to disparage my mother. She was actually a great woman, but that was her experience. My dad was her second best, and I know what that felt like, growing up in a family, and I also recognize it when I see it. Well, so I look at all these relationships that I've seen and that I know, and how many of those are good? Well, in my opinion, the ones that don't end in divorce, there's still quite a few that are left, and most of those aren't very good either. And so we need to take our blinders off and see the person who's really there in front of us. And it's a skill that's acquired, and it also takes time. my suggestion when you meet a woman today, because this is the reality of the world today, say to yourself, odds are pretty good that if I gave this woman a chance, she'd ruin my life. But I'm willing to spend just enough time to decide for sure. So enter into relationships slowly. Take the time to figure out who this person is across from you, and you'll protect your future. Okay, from Proverbs 14:1. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down. And man, it's like, well, how many women today are in relationships would be called this foolish woman that kind of tears her own house down with her own hands? Let's ponder that for a little bit, and we'll start off by saying, hey, have you ever wondered why women have so much focus on self-esteem? Women struggle with insecurity, and there's always this question there, am I good enough? Am I enchanting? And this insecurity drives foolish behavior. And you look at what happens with, women when they kind of progress through life. Age 18 to 24, it's the titillating, attention-getting game, and it's a real high to get chased. It's a bigger high getting caught by a really hot guy. How great of a guy am I capable of landing? That's what these girls want to know. Never realizing that a fling, even for several months, is nowhere near the same thing as landing a guy for a lifetime, because men don't think like women. A man doesn't sit himself down and bond for life until he sees himself as absolutely ready. That's the reality of the situation. I mean, weak men might, but not a kind of a guy that a woman should want. And he's not going to tie up his life until he's got his course charted and he's well on his way. Well, if this kind of a guy gets away, the woman thinks about how to do better with the next guy, who's at least as good as this last guy, if not even better. Women don't ponder that the top 5 to 10% of men today are sleeping with all the attractive women. They don't think that the vast majority of the women that these guys are with are going to end up with a goose egg and not going to get him. So the women are conditioned to believe that they can land a guy who's just enjoying a lay. And they become like a raccoon that's grabbed hold of a shiny object, and they'd rather die than let go. Well, they'll do that till the desire for children becomes paramount. Then they settle for second best or third best for a while. But her heart's really never into this guy. She's never pair bonded with him. And it's just a matter of time before the relationship either implodes or should implode. But there's no worries for her, though, because family court will take care of her and make sure that she gets all the money she needs until the kids turn 18. In my opinion, America's forgotten how to raise women, how to prepare them for their life ahead, to prepare them for healthy relationships. And in this vacuum, women focus too much on what they want to receive from a man, and they focus too little on what they should give. It's really a selfish frame of mind. And to a degree, I can't really entirely blame the women, because men certainly have their issues today too. What are men like today? Responsibility, ambition, honorable masculinity. It's all crawled off into a cave somewhere. And the top 5 to 10% of guys think that, they just like playing the game, and they don't think of the fact that it's destroying these women's ability to pair bond with the kind of guy that she could land. Well, what do the rest of the men do? Too many watch porn, too many fantasize, and they all seem to learn to become kind of fawning simps, hoping that the Mr. Nice Guy approach is somehow going to work for them. If you want a real life, it's never going to happen by being a fawning simp. If you want to ruin your life, marry the woman who sees you as second best, the woman who's in the second half of Proverbs 14:1, the woman who tears down her house with her own hands. Well, King Solomon knew a few things about women. He had 1,000 wives and concubines, and of all these women, he absolutely adored one. He called her the Shulamite. And he said in Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 2, like a lily amongst the thorns is my darling amongst young women. Well, the women hear this, and if it's a Chad-like guy like Solomon, they'd say, I'd like to be called the lily. And they overlook that Solomon called the rest of these women thorns. Thorns hurt people. And they ignore entirely that despite Solomon having had 1,000 wives and concubines, he was looking for the Shulamite and was attracted to her in the midst of all these thorns of these other young women. That's what men are attracted to, is younger women. So what happens? Well, the young women think that they can test their abilities to land the hot, rich alpha Chad. They think one day, I'm going to land him. They think that in their 20s, and it doesn't happen. They think that in their 30s, it doesn't happen. Man, you want to see some people that are just tenacious. Look at the women in their 40s, and they're still chasing it. I've read, a lot of books, and that includes some Christian books on marriage. I'll be honest with you, I gave up reading them. And maybe there's some better ones out there. But for the ones that I did read, in a nutshell, it looks like the starting place is with an idealized Christian world rather than the real world, the one we've just been talking about. And the advice always seems to carry the implied premise that the woman in a relationship will be reasonable and attracted to her man and be led by him, if only he will change and become the man that she wants him to be. It doesn't address the weight of the multiple past relationships messing with her mind and heart. And it doesn't address the fact that, hey, can the man actually become good enough in her eyes? I'm not going to discount the power of Jesus, and because with Christ all things are possible. But that takes people that are genuine in their faith. And how many Christians are truly Spirit-led? And let's start with a guy that's like not in the 5 or 10%. And most men are simping blobs who lack a spine, lack leadership, lack ambition, lack masculinity. The woman who settled for second best knows the situation with almost certainty is not going to improve, and when her patience runs out because of the laws of the land, she's going to file for dissolution of marriage and hunt for something better, even though she thinks she's going to find it, and she's probably not. But she's going to resent the fact that she settled for less than what she feels she deserved. Well, there's some good online viewpoints that appear to counter this sorry state, but from what I've seen, it's only from the male side of the equation. The sexual notch count doesn't seem to affect a man's ability to still pair bond with the right woman, but it does affect a woman's. So these men are encouraged, hey, just like this channel, work on being the better version of yourself, including your professional and social circles. Learn to recognize the traits of low-quality women and steer clear of them. And what do they have to offer for the women? Basically, the message is, you screwed up, you're doomed. And you're especially doomed if you're a single mom. I've heard no solution on how a woman who's made all these mistakes can change her own heart and then to actually grab a hold of a guy that's going to treat her well, but may not be the perfect alpha Chad that they're still looking for. Sex releases oxytocin, that's the love hormone, and it promotes bonding. And getting involved too early with too many partners clouds your judgment. And you can get caught up in the euphoria, and you can be blind to the person that you're there, laying with. And I wish I had a solution for these women, but I don't. For the younger women, there is wisdom in the old-fashioned notion that existed, before the sexual revolution. Waiting keeps you out of trouble. But you'll be hard pressed to find anyone who's a virgin today, before their wedding day. And no judgment. I've made the same mistakes, non-committal sex too, and it's like a kid in the candy shop. At first you're ecstatic with the experience and you eat everything you can, and in time you get sick to your stomach, and in time you realize that, hey, candy isn't all that nutritious. It's also a recipe that can lead towards finding a Proverbs 14 woman who daily tears down her own house. Well, a wise man hears these words and learns how to run to the hills rather than get caught up with a woman who won't emotionally bond to him. And these are the women Solomon calls the thorns. Thorns cut. The closer you get, the more they cut. I've got a few more quotes, and this is going to feel like a bit of whiplash and a slight change of focus, and apologies for that, but there is more that can ruin your life than just a bad relationship. This first quote is an unknown source. I just, for the life of me, I've heard it a million times, but I have no idea who might have said it first. The greatest risk in life isn't taking no risk at all. So you need to take risks. You never have complete information, and that includes the whole dating thing and all that. You don't have absolute knowledge, so to a degree, life is making best guess decisions. And this second quote speaks to that as well. It's from Ernest Hemingway's novel, The Old Man and the Sea, and it came about while Santiago's out fishing and he's talking to himself because he wasn't as prepared as he would have liked to have been. Now is no time to think of what you do not have. Think of what you can do with what's there. Well, when it comes to your life and your plans for the future, realize that there's always risks. Deal with it. But in some things like investing, a little patience will reap huge rewards. And don't throw your money in the water like a fishing lure trying to attract hot women. Trying to pretend you're something you're not with a car you can't afford and so on and so forth. It's a foolish investment. It's what a pie eater would do. You'll just attract low quality women, and you'll attract women with expectations that you can't continue to meet. Instead, work on your plan, work on yourself, allocate your funds and your time in a way that's going to maximize your life and become exactly who you want to be. Because whoever's out there will take notice, and a good woman will appreciate you for who you've become, not for who you pretended to be. I hope you've enjoyed today's topic. Here's a link to part A of the series on money. Live today and plan for the best life of the days ahead. Thanks for joining.